Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Reacting Reddit, where real people read, react, respond to content online. Today we're going to be talking about Proposition 22, which is some legislation in California that has to do with the definition of independent contractors versus employees, specific to apps like Uber, DoorDash, Lyft, these kind of places, right? The gig economy, so to speak. And you may think, if you're listening to this from the US, you may think this is something limited to where you are, but we're talking about an almost entirely worldwide phenomena, where these apps are taking over taxi drivers' old jobs, and taxi drivers are quitting and getting on these apps. This is even happening here in Nicaragua, in Latin America. If you haven't heard of Nicaragua before, it is north of Costa Rica and south of Honduras and El Salvador. Now you know where Nicaragua is. Awesome. And guess what? There's tons of app workers here as well. But the difference is there's no Uber and Lyft. So here you still have all the traditional taxis. Uber and Lyft requires a certain average quality of car, basically. They need cars to be newer. And because of that, they're not available in Nicaragua. But there are other ones. There's one called Aventon. There's other options, basically. But I'm saying that because you still see tons and tons and tons of taxi drivers who aren't using apps. However, for delivery on a motorcycle, people use apps for that here all day, all the time. It's really easy to get almost anything delivered. You can get cash delivered, you can get food delivered, you can get pharmaceuticals delivered, you can get veterinary services delivered. Like, you can order a vet to come and castrate your cat on an app. Like, it's amazing. So this is a worldwide thing, but often how California chooses and how things go in California, sometimes it can have a big ripple effect, right? And it can cause companies, when they lose these, to actually go and focus in other countries where the laws haven't been changed. So to give you some context before we get into whatever these Reddit commenters are going to tell us about this or mislead us about this, the way it works now, before this, and I think this was actually successfully voted for. Correct me if I'm wrong. This already happened. But the way that it used to work was that if you were a driver for Lyft, you are originally considered an independent contractor. But California has been trying, or the government has been trying to make it so that these people are treated as employees of the company, right? And you can debate that, whether, they're actually employees or not, because they do have significantly more freedom over their schedule. So it really depends on how you define things. You can't really argue around the fact that the Lyft driver can choose when they want to drive. You could argue that if they have to earn a certain amount of money, they can't. They have to work all the time, right? And that's where it gets gray, like somebody in a more dire financial circumstance is going to look much more like a traditional employee, whereas somebody who's using this service and others is going to look more like an independent contractor, right? So you definitely can have different lifestyles of how they're using it. And the reason this is relevant is because independent contractors aren't given the same benefits. It's not required in the USA that independent contractors have like health insurance and that kind of stuff. Whereas as an employer, you almost always have to offer these kinds of things to your employees. You have to offer something, right? So it's an issue because obviously the app companies, they don't want it to be employees, right? Because then they have to give them more benefits and stuff. So they're proposing, basically, that there's a revised version of this where instead of having to be classified as employees, they're independent contractors, but there's specific rules for the app employment industry, basically. They make up a minimum wage, but the wage is only paid actively during driving. It's not going to be paid when you're waiting for work or something like that, right? Whereas in a traditional job, that's how it works. So let's get into it. Let's see what people have to say about this. I bet there's a lot of different opinions to mislead and inform us. Jim 1 says, California's entire initiative system is a cesspool. Initiatives are misnamed and written such that one very small part can be glommed onto by some marketing types to exploit their ads, and mostly keep our cowardly politicians away from having to legislate so they can fundraise. Performance Burst says, I spent at least 3 hours researching how to vote on them, and there were still a few that I couldn't figure out. Cultured Banana Slug says, a good rule of thumb. If it's proposed by the agency being regulated, it's going to F you over. No business goes to the court and says, hey, make us do something that'll benefit the people. Yeah, you could argue that some internet availability interests are really good for people that businesses have tried to initiate, but in general, rule of thumb, that is an absolute true thing. Like in this case, the current law, the law was that independent contractors were different, and California was trying to treat these companies, make them treat them as employees, but they weren't doing that. So this vote was a way to stall time, basically, and then they were able to lobby successfully and get the thing to change. So it worked out for them, right? I wonder how much of that stuff has happened in 2020 where people were so distracted by everything that was going on that under the table, a lot of stuff was like, oh, now there's a chance. We can just do it. No one's going to know, How much do you think that happened? Splinkrith says, the proposition system is an extreme manifestation of an issue in voting where everyone is expected to possess expertise in the domain being voted on. It feels a lot like letting non-civil engineers determine how to build a bridge from a list of proposals submitted by some qualified and a lot of unqualified applicants, and they vote for the one they think is the prettiest. As I understand the original legislative decision, the gig economy companies could have made some adjustments to their businesses to continue classifying their workers as independent contractors, but that has the potential to greatly impact the quality of their service. These exploitative practices make me think of the stories about factories during the Industrial Revolution. Damn, that's a good synonym there. Master Praetor says this isn't the first time California has looked stupid after falling for some corporate buffoonery. Yeah, California is the land of corporate buffoonery. It's so weird going there. I've been to San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, mostly in the Bay Area. And you see these really tall, magnificent glass, shiny buildings, and then surrounding their base is like tent city. And it's like so interesting, that image of just this extreme wealth up in the sky, and then towards the bottom, the homelessness that's so prevalent in California in particular. It's really, it's almost poetic. Like it's straight out of Star Wars. That's some Coruscant. That's what Coruscant is. Avantardist says, agreed. I can't make ends meet on some of the propositions. I often just look at what groups are on either side and vote that way. It's not ideal. I'm disappointed that this proposition passed. That's because lawyers do. Oh, this post by Mustworm Mutters. That's because lawyers do it. Lawyers pride themselves on logic, like doctors pride themselves on handwriting. It took me a moment to catch that sarcasm there. Safiru says, which is popular vote is a horrible way to govern. It just leads to uneducated mob rule. Well, I believe that with time, people become more educated and informed. Like, our people now in most countries are exponentially more informed than they were 100 years ago. So what about in another 200 years? I think we might see some cool stuff, Not that we'll be alive, but it'll happen eventually. Moving on. Dankth says, and in the meantime, Businesses like delivery services who did similar stuff, designated work, directed foro to locations, sometimes but not always your vehicle, are still out of business because they didn't have an app or the money behind them, unless they categorize their drivers as employees and pay the associated costs that tech companies just wrote their own ticket to avoid. They're like tech, like WeWork, who is just a subletting landlord with a self-proclaimed tech veneer. People are very bitter towards tech, but also it is kind of relevant that like these companies can do better things, yeah, but there are a lot of other reasons people drive for like Lyft and Uber. And if you like actually talk to the Lyft and Uber drivers, they're quite like entrepreneurial, like opportunistic people. They're pretty good at like finding ways to earn money doing different things, and a lot of them aren't people who will tolerate just working and not getting what they need. I'm not saying that everyone who works for Lyft and Uber gets what they need, but I've had a lot of conversations with Lyft and Uber drivers, and there's definitely, you know, they don't say that it's like an amazing company and so easy, but a lot of them did seem kind of grateful for the flexibility and the freedom. And granted, that gratitude is something that these companies do take advantage of, but it's important to understand that we need to fight for like more rights and stuff, but it's also important to recognize that things have improved a lot for like this to be a problem. You know, that's a good sign. Ash is a Wolf says Uber and Lyft's entire business model is undercutting legit businesses through legal loopholes until they can move to automation and dump workers out entirely. Yeah. Well, I can't argue with the second part. Moving to automation and getting rid of the human part. Look, you can be bitter about that, but here's the secret for you. That is something that not just Uber and Lyft are doing, but so many companies are doing, that concepts like universal basic income that seem alien to us now, like, oh no, people need to work, they need to work hard, yeah, like, humanity is going to get to a point, probably pretty soon, where there are less and less jobs available because of how extensively the automation of technology has become. And we still live in we are just in the blink of the beginning. We've barely even seen what's been available and what's about to change. And if you think that growing technology is going to allow 8 billion humans, let's say 10% of those, right? Let's say that we need to be able to get jobs for 10% of 8 billion people. You really think we're going to be able to maintain that with all this automation and technology moving forward the way it does? Stuff like UBI is going to become a reality. It's just a matter of time. There's no way that humanity can keep making up bullshit reasons to get humans to do dumb stuff for work when it's actually detrimental to the human. You can't tell me that it's good for a person to work for 20 years in a factory doing the exact same task over and over and over and over again. You can't tell me that they wouldn't have been better off being paid something that allowed them to think more creatively and analytically, to actually put in their own opinion and see how it affects things, instead of just being stamped their whole life. That stuff sucks, and it's the reality in a lot of places. But they do change. These things all do change. And we are getting to a point with society where we are being pushed towards this change because of this pandemic. Whether you like it or not, or realize this is happening, millions of people are becoming obsessed with working from home, learning from YouTube, studying courses online, working from a computer, quitting their jobs. I only know this because I teach this kind of stuff, and I've been teaching this for 3 years. And once COVID started, it was like a atomic bomb of interest. Anybody who had YouTube videos about those subjects, about online income, viewership doubled for everything and has consistently doubled or tripled since the beginning of the COVID pandemic. Interest in remote working and working online, working from home, if you look in Google Trends, it is at record highs. We exist right now at a point where more people are interested in earning money from a computer and becoming their own boss, earning online, whatever you want to call it. There's more people interested right now than ever before. Think about that. What does that mean? And all these drivers, you know that drivers is one of the biggest employers in the United States, and it's the technology that's closest to full total automation. There's already drivers, automatic drivers, who outperform human drivers. The issue isn't building them. It's we already have them. We're just making them drive a lot so they know how to drive well. Like making them go into tens of thousands of situations over and over again so they learn. They're already out there. There's already towns and cities where they're rolled out. This comment about them building up gig workers and then dumping them to move on to automation, yeah, that's real. However, it is important to understand that an automatic driving car isn't cheap. The automation to drive the car can sometimes be as expensive as the car itself. You know, sometimes things are retrofitted, sometimes they're built that way from the beginning. So, we are at a change. You listening to this, you are at a exponential point in humanity. And I would make a bet with you that in 30 or 40 years, people aren't going to be as alien to concepts like universal basic income. Especially after these stimulus checks. Never before have we gotten so many payments from our government. What is this? All right, everybody. That's it for now. If you like this kind of content, please reach out to me. We are looking for more people to make these kind of videos. And if you want a specific kind of video made for you, then just comment below. Leave a link to your favorite Reddit channel or a conversation you really like. Or if there is something specific, like a topic you'd like me to pick, maybe you want to learn about dolphins and how they play with each other or masturbate. Or maybe you want to learn about how to use different studying methods. I don't know. Tell me. Comment. Let me know. All right? Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you want to make this kind of content, please reach out to us. We are looking for other content creators who are interested in using software that browses Reddit and allows you to make thresholds to filter out the boring stuff. So you only get to read interesting stuff on your video, right? And as always, the goal is 50% of it should be your own content. What does that mean? That means that you need to summarize and be reading your own writing in your head, obviously, 50% of the time. That should be your goal. You should be reading 50% of the time and then reacting 50% of the time. And that's the balance to go for these videos, because you want to be able to get monetized, right? Yeah, verbatim readings can't be monetized, so think about that. All right, guys. Catch you next time. Best of luck. Ciao.